Hare Krishna. Thank you all for coming. You could do so many things with your Sunday afternoon. You could be out bowling, or I don't know, whatever. You could be doing something. But instead you decided, let me go to the Krishna temple and see what's up. You know, the first time I came to the temple, my brother told me, my older brother, let's go to the Hare Krishna temple. I said, no, I've seen those guys. I thought they were just either with Timothy, this is 1969 in Laguna Beach. And I thought, well, there's some kind of hippies that took a wrong turn in San Francisco. They're out here with Tim Leary, or I don't know what they're now. I said, no. And my brother said, but they have a great vegetarian feast. And I was a vegetarian. So I thought, well, okay, I can sit through anything for 45 minutes for a good meal. So you'll have to tolerate me for a few minutes, but there is a good meal afterwards, so just hang in there. Om Agana, this is a prayer to my spiritual teacher. There's a murti of him right here, Srila Prabhupada, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement. You know, I'm sitting on this big seat, and it's very comfortable. Oh, what is this? Should we shut that door and open this? Can you do that? Because they're going to get energetic out there, the kids. So there's a name for this seat. And it doesn't belong to me, and it doesn't belong to anyone who sits on it. Anyone know who this seat belongs to? Srila Vyasadeva. And who is Srila Vyasadeva? One might ask, those who are coming to the temple for the first time, who is Srila Vyasadeva? This is called the Vyas Asana. Asana means seat. You're also these asana, these little cushions, it means a seat. So Vyasadeva is the compiler of all the Vedic literature. It's actually called the literary incarnation of the Supreme Lord. Let me say it this way. Suppose somebody, before I sat down on this seat, had poured quick dry Gluzol on the seat, and I was glued on this seat. Kids, don't try this at home, but suppose that was the situation. Now, work with me here, stay where you are. But suppose I wanted to shake hands with this gentleman. Now, I'm glued to the seat. I can stretch. I can practice hatha yoga. I can maybe get a couple more inches. But can I, assuming that I am fixed, limited, bound to this seat, can I shake hands with him? We hear no. Do we have any yes advocates? We have a yes advocate. How is it possible? If he takes the initiative, then it becomes very easy. Why not? It's a visual. Nice to meet you. So if he takes the initiative, then it becomes a very easy thing. So one of the first steps in genuine spiritual knowledge is to recognize it's not low self-esteem, it's not diminishing that, I'm just weak and creaturely and how can I approach the Supreme. It doesn't mean that at all. But can anyone tell me what's going on the other side of this wall right now? People say, show me God. I got to see it to believe it. Okay. Can you tell me what's going on the other side of this wall? Anyone here can tell me exactly what's going on the other side of this wall? Kids yelling. Okay, that's a general category based on previous experience. No, it's all right. But, what's that?
It's not specific.
Yeah, but how many kids? Where are they? He's just joking. He knows what's up. So my point is that, and yet, one man kept saying to my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement, they were having a room conversation, and the man kept saying, well, as far as I know. Well, as far as I know, Swami. Well, as far as... And finally, Prabhupada said, that's my point. How far do you know? So how far do we actually know? Our senses are limited. It's an honest... You can say, well, it's the cumulative knowledge of the ages, and we stand on the shoulders of giants, and incrementally the field of knowledge is growing. I mean, look what's happened in medicine. Look what's happened in so many, you can say so many things. Okay, fine. Now, in the World Olympics, I think in 1930, I did a Google on it, whatever, 32, 28, whatever it was. The world's record for high jumping, you run with the pole and boing, you go over it was like 14 feet. I mean, I offer my respects for that. And, with training techniques and fiberglass poles and special shoes and the whole thing, I think they're up. Somebody can Google it, but I think they're over 20 feet now. Good training for becoming a grasshopper in your next life, if you believe in the laws of karma and desire propelling it. Okay, incrementally, advancement was made. So incrementally, we can make advancement in knowledge, and each generation adds to the pool of knowledge. Fine, we're not discounting that. But does anyone here think that pole vault example, anyone here think that anyone's ever going to be able to pole vault to the moon? Minus Acme jet shoes? I mean, anyone think it's going to happen? It's not going to happen. You can expand to a certain limit. Similarly, the fields of knowledge expand to a certain limit. So back to a crying baby. I usually get 3. So that's 1 down. We'll see how many more. So the point is that the first step in genuine spiritual knowledge is to one of the first steps is to recognize that, wait a minute, if I want to understand the infinite, I have to hear from the infinite. My spiritual master liked the British saying, you cannot take the kingdom of God by storm. So I'm sitting on this seat. This seat represents the seat of Vyasadeva. And whatever anyone's sitting on this seat, they have to speak from the Vedic literature. They have to speak from Vyasadeva. They have to speak from those, what is it? Tene Brahma Hriday Adikavaye, which is one of the first verses of one of the books we read, Bhagavatam. And it means that the Supreme Lord enlightened the first living being from within the heart. So we accept there's, Avaroha and the Roha. There's 2 processes of knowledge, gaining knowledge. One is called the ascending process, based on sense perception, cumulative knowledge over the generation. That's the ascending process, which we pointed out is limited in many ways. But there's something called the descending process. That's him taking the initiative to shake my hand. And our presentation in the Vedic tradition, like Bible, biblical, Quran, Quranic. So the Vedas, those are our source books of knowledge, written by Vyasadeva, who was Krishna himself giving instruction. Let me give you another example. Everything we cook is fresh. We're offering to Krishna the Supreme, so we have to offer him the best. Krishna's the best, offer him the best. But if you ever happen to have a can of canned corn, or any canned vegetable will do, throw it out. No, but if you happen to have it and you read the label, it gives the instructions. This actually happened. The Libby company had the instruction for how to heat canned corn on the label. Open can, pour in saucepan, heat, stir to taste. I mean, a trained chimp could do that, you would think, right? Highly trained, well motivated, lots of bananas, but you could get a chimp to do that. You might have to help them with the can, but other than that. So they thought, how many people do, this is advertising space. We could be using for something else, and we're telling, people how to, forget it. Let's use that space for something else. They took off the instructions how to heat. It's a true story. How to heat canned corn, put on some advertisement for some other product they have. Oh, they were flooded by letters. People putting it in the microwave. People trying to open. I don't know what they were doing, but people were stumped. They're voting for president. It explains a lot of things to us. But, they're driving cars. So even a canned corn comes with instructions on it, right? Anything you get whatever little knick-knack you get from wherever, it's got some little instructions, does it, generally speaking. So this world is a machine. It operates like a machine. I mean, it's got laws of physics, laws of chemistry, laws of so many things. Works like a machine. I mean, everybody counts on gravity. How many of you thought about gravity this morning when you got out of bed? Geez, I hope it still works. The world's running on a lot of laws. So it's like it's a giant machine. And if we accept for a moment, I don't want to go too far afield, but you can think about it. You can ask me later on. You can email me. Anyone here, can you think of somewhere that you've experienced order, pattern, symmetry, design, where there's not intelligence behind it? Think about it. Just take your time, no rush. I'm not going anywhere. Just think about, can you think of anything? Wherever we see, the fact of the matter is, wherever we see order, pattern, symmetry, design, there's intelligence behind it. Now, what is the nature of that's another story. We can talk some other time. But just common sense, that great gift to humankind, this world is going on like a machine. That's a simple thing to understand. And there's order, pattern, symmetry, design. I mean, the interdependence of the different ecological systems in this world is profound. Somebody sent me, it was a brief on it was a study by Scripps Institute of just one column. The Scripps pier is there? Is that, the pier? And they just took the different ecosystems on one pier. And this produces a byproduct that provides for the next layer, and the next layer provides shelter for the whole thing. You change the water temperature 0.5 degrees off the coast of Peru, and due course that'll work its way up all the way up the coast and change those ecosystems. It's called the butterfly effect, is one of the things it's called. So that this world is a profoundly interdependent, organized machine, and that the machine does not happen by chance is not very logical. What is Occam's razor? The simplest explanation is usually that first off, each explanation has to actually explain the phenomena. But if you have 4 or 5 examples that could explain the phenomena, the simplest one is usually the truth. That's a basic principle of logic. So the idea that there's a design and that there's intelligence Because there's pattern, order, symmetry, design, there's intelligence behind it is simply logical. My point being, back to the can of Libby's corn, the idea that there's no instruction manual for this machine, if there's a designer, if there's a machine, there's no operator's manual, we're just let loose blindly, good luck. It's not logical at all. So our presentation is the literary incarnation, the compiler of the Vedas, Srila Vyasadeva, inserted into one of the Vedic literatures, the Mahabharata, is Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is like the Rosetta Stone to the Vedas. By Rosetta Stone, I mean, what is it? They were trying to figure out hieroglyphics, the Egyptian language, and they couldn't decipher to save their life. And they found a stone, they call it the Rosetta Stone, and I think it had Aramaic, Greek, and hieroglyphics on it. And because they knew those, they could, excuse me, they could decipher. That's the way they cracked open hieroglyphics. So it was the key that translated, that gave them entrance into hieroglyphics. The Vedas, I mean, there's just to give an example, there's 108 Upanishads. I mean, each one of them has so many verses. How many verses are in the, and it's a progression. It ultimately culminates in Vedanta Sutra. And the proper commentary in Vedanta Sutra, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Bhagavatam was 18,000 verses? Yeah. So where to start? And what is the key that explains all the other principles? The key that explains all the other principles, that is the Rosetta Stone for opening the Vedic literature and Vedantic understanding, is Bhagavad Gita. Now, Bhagavad Gita explains 5 things. That's the heart of where we're going. And what time is it? Okay, we got time. People are always, well, I was thinking about this. Throughout time immemorial, people have developed intoxication. They study I don't know when, they go back to wherever, and people were making beer. Rice wine in India, People want to alter their state. Why? Simple answer. They don't like the state they're in. Thank you. Because the truth of the matter is, and we'll get into that in a second, is that it's really the inherent, well, I don't want to jump ahead of myself. There used to be a TV show when I was a kid. I'm 70 years old, so you can sort that one out. It was called Queen for a Day or King for a Day. I don't know if any of you know it. But you won some contest, and you got to be treated like a king for a day. Yeah? Something like that. Was it Queen for a Day? All righty. Queen for a Day. Same principle. The queen usually runs the king, so it's better to be the queen. Queen for a day. But who wants to be queen for a day? They start, it gets around, sunset, and they're getting an anxiety. Doesn't last. Human nature, the nature of the self, is uninterrupted, ever-increasing happiness. And the happiness of this, well, I'll say this. So people are looking for keys. They're looking, the Da Vinci Code, the keys to find the Holy Grail. People are always looking for keys and clues. They will change the vision of the world, how we see and how we experience the world. They're doing it in a pedestrian way by some intoxication, but the next morning, what happens? They wind up with a hangover, they've made a fool of themselves, and they can't find their left shoe. That didn't really work out so well. So what are those keys? and those that will actually elevate us to a permanent state of uninterrupted, pure consciousness. And as soon as you see the sun, there's heat and light. They're the byproducts of the sun, heat and light. The byproducts of genuine spiritual consciousness, it's called Sat Chit Ananda. It means to be eternal, full of knowledge, and full of happiness. That is actually the default state of our self. Eternal, full of knowledge, and full of happiness. And we're all trying to figure out how to get there. So the operating manual, coming from Srila Vyasadeva, the literary incarnation of Krishna, descending transcendental knowledge, found in the form of Bhagavad Gita, lays out 5 principles. And if we see, you ever get your eyes checked? Who hasn't? You know, click, 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 click. They put the different lenses and no, better, worse, worse. And by a series of lenses, your vision becomes clear. Right? You with me? What are those lenses? Click, click, click. That you line them up and you actually get pure spiritual vision. What are those lenses? Those lenses are listed as 5 elements in Bhagavad Gita. We're going to briefly zip through those 5, and then we're going to ask for some questions. At least that's the plan. We'll see where we wind up. The first is called prakriti, or matter. Stuff. The Vedas keep it simple: earth, fire, water, air, mind, intelligence, false ego. There's gross matter and subtle matter. But that's the stuff that makes up this world. Like you get a periodical chart, it's got all the elements on it, and that's the stuff that's supposed to make up matter. You combine all that together and you get atoms, you get molecules, you get elements, and zip, zip, you get, New York City. But it's made of those building blocks of matter. But matter is inert. It's dead matter. Unless somebody pushes it. In the beginning, there has to be some impetus. There has to be some. So you have dead matter. That's called prakriti. That's the first. To understand what is this material nature. It's just dead matter. Okay, well, maybe that's all there is. But then you've got to deal with consciousness. In the Vedas, this is called jiva, or the individual self, us. Consciousness is not brain function. That's a whole other thing we can get into. It's not just synapses firing up here, chemical and electrical, and that creates consciousness. Computers do not feel. And they can't figure that. Go to MIT next time you're there. Go to UCSD, talk to the brain researchers there. They cannot explain how things go. Everything we experience ultimately is reduced down to electrical impulses that go into the brain. I mean, this is very simple. We can explain some other time in detail. But how do electrical impulses, pluses and minuses, translate into feelings? People feel about the color orange, or whatever color. You feel a strawberry. How does it taste? How does it, what wave of emotions it brings back, or, all of that stuff. How does it go from an electrical impulse, it's just pluses and minuses? How does that become feeling? It's called qualia. And they have no idea how it happens. Absolutely zero. So that which is the most essential part of existence, we all know that we're conscious. Each one of us is a conscious individual. We all know that. I'm not so sure about you. You might be a figment of my imagination. It might all be a dream. But hey, there's the Vedas break it down. One of our great teachers, Jiva Goswami. There's the seer, the seen, and the act of seeing. There's the seer, there's the seen, and the act of seeing. We know that. I'm seeing you. The Bhagavad Gita, anyway, I don't go too far afield, describes this body as a city of 9 gates. We're living with, not the eyes, nose, tongue. You can do the math. They had 9 gates, 9 orifices or whatever. And we're living in that city, looking out, seeing. So there's matter. But different than matter is another thing called consciousness. Consciousness is an irreducible fact of existence. It's not the result. It's not a byproduct of matter. It's its own irreducible entity. Each one of us is an individual. So that's called jiva. And the comparison is, if I try to mix oil and water, how does that work? I can shake it, I can do whatever. But if you leave a simple mixture of oil and water, in due course of time, what will happen? They separate. You can't interlace them. They don't merge. So one of the first beginnings of spiritual understanding, of this change of vision to see the world and experience this natural default state of ourself, which is eternal, to feel eternality, to be full of knowledge, and to be full of ananda. Ananda is not just mundane happiness, beginning and end, hot and cold, black and white, stimulus response. It's not talking about that. It's talking about ever-increasing, unlimited spiritual happiness. We have to understand this first thing. I am not matter. I'm the eternal spirit soul, conscious living entity riding in this body. So if I'm not matter, if matter is one thing and I'm something else, if it's like oil and water, then maybe my happiness is not found in matter. By putting this and that on the tongue or stimulating the different sense. Maybe that's not, we're trying to mix oil and water and it doesn't happen. So those are the first two. Matter, which is called prakriti in Sanskrit. The other is the living entity, jiva. Now there's something called karma. Nowadays everybody knows karma. Action and reaction. I mean, just basic principle, the laws of physics. Bodies of matter moving through time and space. And there's so many laws that determine those. Now, we're bodies, physical, whatever. We're entities moving through time and space, but we're exempt from any kind of law? Show me the consistent, seamless logic in that. Everything else, every other, it's all right, don't worry about it. You can grab a cushion, yeah. And one for your wife. Be a gentleman. I'm sure he was planning on it. I don't want to get him in trouble when he gets home. So and every great teacher, what does Jesus say? As you sow, so shall you reap. Every action is an equal, opposite, and reaction. You throw a ball down, bounces back. It's not rocket science. We're bodies moving through time and space, but we're exempt from any kind of law of action and reaction. Help me out with the seamless logic there. It doesn't make sense at all. So another factor in this 5 factors that create the genuine spiritual experience of existence is the principle of karma. Every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I'll give you a simple example. And then people say, well, how can there be karma? How can there be God? Why do good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people? Huh? Answer that one, Swami. Stump the Swami question. Why do good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people? Okay, I'll give you a simple example because we want to move quickly. I guess if you go to Central California, any agricultural area, you know what a silo is, right? Everybody know a grain silo? You got a picture of a grain silo in your mind? You go out there in harvest time, they're blowing the corn into the silo. Or oats, whatever it may be, Come back, Suppose you go out of the field and you see that they're blowing oats into the silo. But you open up the silo and corn comes out. It's a magic silo. It's turning oats into corn. I mean, look, oats are going in, corn's coming out. Is it a magic silo? Other than Dravida, who wants to help me out? Is it a magic silo or not? Don't be shy. If you get the wrong answer, you still get nice Krishna feast. Don't worry, we're still friends. Anyone want to guess what's happening there? Is it a magic silo? Transforming oats to corn? Yes, young man.
I'm pretty sure it's not a magic silo.
Okay, well then you have to tell me what it is. Can't leave me in a vacuum. You can think about it. I don't want to put you on the spot. But you're 50% there. It's definitely not a magic silo. Anyone else want to take a shot? He got you halfway down the road. Come on now. Somebody, yes, Prabhu. They were putting corn in earlier. And what you put in earlier is coming out. And when the corn all flows out, then you'll get the oats. And if they put rye on top of that, then you're going to get rye. So if we accept the basic principle that the soul is eternal, cannot be destroyed. Krishna says in Gita, it has no beginning, has no end. But it cannot be withered by the wind or burned by the. We've had a previous life. And what we did in our previous life, we're getting in this life. And what we do in this life, we'll get in the next life. So it's not whimsical, random, capricious, good things happening to bad people and bad things happening to good people. There's a verse, I think it's from the Bible. The wheel of justice turns slowly, but grinds infinitely fine. So the wheel of karma is there. So to understand, wait a minute, there's matter, there's all this stuff, and I'm here, the eternal spiritual living entity, trying to push it around and enjoy, but I really don't fit in it. And in the course of that, I'm generating all kinds of actions and reactions, which are entangling me in my future life. Entangling me now, entangling me in the future. You've seen the wheel of samsara. It's a wheel of birth and death and birth and death, and makes complete sense. Okay, so we've got matter, which is prakriti. We've got, what's the other thing? We've got the individual conscious beings, the jiva. Now we've got karma, which is an operating principle, how it's all kind of bouncing around and working. Then you've got what's called kala, or time. And time is the great stirring agent. It's like stirring the brew. It's mixing this whole thing up. And time is always pushing. You're like the beat cop. Move along, move along, move along. He's swinging his billy. You got to go. So it's pushing us through and that's a whole other meditation on the purpose of time. And one who's intelligent puts everything in life into one of two buckets. And it's not garbage and recyclable. That's also nice. We're not arguing against that. Does anyone know, seen through the factor of time, what are the two buckets intelligent people sort life and all activities? We're all making choices. Everybody's making choices. To do this, to do that, to go here. Everybody's got values. Everybody's got faith. We have faith in gravity. We have faith in, my grandmother said, or faith in, I read it in the... Anybody here doubt... I don't want to go too far afield. I'll just finish it because I was starting. Anyone doubt the existence of the Eiffel Tower? We have any Eiffel Tower doubters here? How many of you have been to see the Eiffel Tower? Raise your hand if you've been to see the Eiffel Tower. We got some people saying, but what'd you say? Saw it in Vegas. Not quite. Something's lost in translation. Could be Photoshop. How do you really know? Because we have faith. Hey, my friends went there. They took a picture. Of course it's there. But that's a type of faith. Everyone has faith. Anybody seen an atom recently? There goes one. No. We all have faith in all types of things. So we are sorting things based on faith, based on experience, based on accumulated knowledge, into two buckets influenced by time. Anyone want to guess what those two buckets are now that we've eliminated recycled and unrecyclable? Yes. Exactly. The Vedas say Sat and Asat. Sat, which means that which is eternal, and Asat means that which is not eternal, which is temporary. Now, if we all have goals and values, but if we see through the eye of, wait a minute, this matter, under the influence of time, is, what do they say? Nothing is certain but change. The Buddhists say you can never bathe in the same river twice. We were talking about that this morning. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that the material nature is constantly mutable. I'll give you a nice example. Many, many years ago, when the Krishna consciousness movement first started in America, if you weren't white, Anglo-Saxon, Christian, you were a little strange. And if you threw in karma, reincarnation, shaved head, became a monk, you'd lost your mind. So there was one devotee, loving parents, misguided, misunderstanding, but loving parents. Their son became a full-time practicer of Bhagavad Gita, a Hare Krishna monk. And because he was underage, they took him to a psychiatrist. They said, this boy has lost his mind. They actually confined, I think for 72 hours, they had him, committed for observation. So the psychiatrist, true story, I'll tell you later on who the devotee was. The psychiatrist interviewed him. And, one of the symptoms is if somebody had a psychotic break. Are you hearing voices? Do you have hallucinations? Right? That's because one of the first questions they ask as they stroke their beard and say, how does that make you feel? So the psychiatrist says to him, are you seeing things? And the devotee says, well, if you mean hallucinations, no. But I don't see things as you see. At which point the doctor leaned forward and tapped his pipe and said, how does that make you feel? Can you explain? And the devotee, young kid, he's only 16 and a half, he said, they were sitting in a solarium, in the hospital, and there was a table, the doctor's on one side, the devotee's on the other side, and there was a flower vase on the, little vase, a few flowers. And the devotee said, just like you see this flower vase, you see the flower. He said, you're thinking that it's something that you can enjoy. You smell it, it smells nice for you. You can give it to your girlfriend, You had a fight with your wife, take her home some flowers or whatever it is, You're seeing it as an instrument for your material enjoyment and exploitation. That's how you see this. He said, but I don't see it like that. He said, I see it as matter, as we were talking about, that's temporarily taken this form. And it will go through states, growth, maturation, culmination, decline, and death. Every physical thing, whether it's a culture or whatever it is, there's an inception, there's a development, there's a maturation, culmination, there's a decline, and there's a dissolution. Any physical form. Bhagavatam calls it the river of names only. It's a constant flow of mutable forms, and we stamp names on it. This is a microphone. Come back in 200 years. Will this be a microphone? Who knows where it will be? A different component part. You come back in 1,000 years, it's dust to dust, ashes to ashes. So right now, I'm Badrinarayan Swami. Here's this body. But I'm not going to be around that much longer, So where does this... So it's constantly river of names. It's constantly changing. So the devotee said, you see this flower as an instrument for your enjoyment and exploitation. Me, I see it simply material nature as a constantly mutable form. Now it's in the form of a flower. Someday it'll be something else. It's always shifting atoms, randomly moving. It's a river of names only and has no value. Did he leave in there? No. He said, however, if I take this beautiful flower and I offer it in love to the Supreme Lord, my heart becomes cleansed, the Supreme Lord is pleased, everyone surrounding it becomes happy. The farmer that grew it gets a great spiritual benefit. By connecting matter with the Supreme Lord, everyone becomes happy. So the devotee concluded, therefore, I don't see what you see. And the doctor was shocked. The doctor immediately checked him out. In fact, it's the end of the story. The father, well-meaning, was at the front desk of the hospital coming to check on his son. The doctor's there signing him out. The father said, what? He said, I talked to your son. We really had a breakthrough. If I was 20 years younger, I'd join the Hare Krishna movement too. The father had an anxiety attack. They had to commit the father, because he was hyperventilating to have a heart attack, and the boy went home. So matter, the living entity, karma, and time, which is mixing it. Now I said there's 5 things. I've mentioned 4. The 5th is called Ishvara, or the Supreme Controller. Krishna, the Supreme Lord. We're all controllers. I can control this table. I can, to some degree. We're all Ishwaras to some degree. But there's a Supreme Controller. As I was saying, wherever there's order, pattern, symmetry, design, there's a designer. So if someone, these are the keys, this is the Rosetta Stone, these are the lenses that fall in place, and one actually sees reality as it is. That I'm not this material body. I'm not this matter. This matter is my home. And so one last thing, when we say Ishvara, if I have, this is a shadow, let's just say this is a shadow, and this is my hand. Now don't overthink it, folks. Why does the shadow of the hand have 5 fingers for 10 extra points? Because the original object. Now, in this world, there's form, there's shapes, there's emotions, there's relationships. We're the very essence of the thing. If you want to break someone down psychologically, it's not waterboarding, although I don't advocate it. It's not waterboarding. It's not pulling your fingernails out. You know what completely crashes? Anyone know? Isolation. Sense deprivation and isolation. The problem is people just skid too far off the edge. It's a total psychological breakdown on a prolonged period, generally speaking. And the idea that eternality is we find our home and Om, and we lose all identity, all relationship, it's all one. It's called by the Vaishnava Acharyas, the teachers in our line, as a type of spiritual suicide. So, as there's a Supreme Lord, and as we have the reflection, the shadow, there's a kingdom of God. There's a spiritual world. And every great saint and sage will tell you the exact same thing in every single tradition. They'll say the same thing. So our simple presentation, and we'll maybe take a few questions. I want to tell let's see. We'll get into that if there's no questions. But in summation, we are not meant to just stumble along and there's a lot of language is an indication of the consciousness of the culture. People develop words to communicate their experience. That's the genesis or the impetus for language. You want to explain yourself. You want to communicate. I think someone was telling me Eskimos have so many words for different types of snow, 16 different types of snow, because that's their experience. There's hard snow, mushy snow, this type, Similarly, if you're living in the Sahara Desert, in the Sahel or wherever it is, you got so many languages for desert. There's high desert, low desert. There's all kinds of different types of deserts. So if we want to break down our experience, those 5 factors explain how to see this world, how to experience this world. What is that higher consciousness that we are all seeking? We are not satisfied. That was my point. We should not be. That's what language is, an expression of consciousness. I got back on track there. Sorry, I was thinking about something else. People say, "Well, we got to take the bitter with the sweet. Every cloud is a silver lining." That's life. That's how it is. There's so many rationales just to put your head down and soldier through, and that's as good as it gets. But what if it's not? Now, my guru used to say that life runs on 2 tracks, like a train runs on 2 tracks. We have to maintain our families. We all have our responsibilities. Devotees, we work hard for Krishna. So everybody's, we're not negating that you have to do your duty as Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. But that's not the sole message of Bhagavad Gita. That's one of the rails. We have to do our duty. We have to deal with this material world. You have to eat. You have to sleep. You have to, if you want to function. But even Jesus says people do not live by bread alone. So what is that second rail for the train to run, for the train of life? That second rail is spiritual consciousness. As I said in the beginning, you find it in every culture. People want to get intoxicated because they're not happy with their current reality. If we're just controlled by instinct, there's a type of bird I don't know the name of it. You see it in India, in Bengal a lot. And they make a nest. It's quite an interesting design. And it hangs on a branch, and it's kind of teardrop shaped. It's got a little hole there. Huh? Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah. You never see that bird say, hang on a minute. I'm going geodesic this year. I'm putting on a sun porch. It never happens. You never, as far as migration, they never say, every year it's North Africa. I'm going to Spain. Forget it. I'm going somewhere else. Asia looks good. Let's try it out. So, but the higher one evolves in consciousness, there's a sense of there's got to be more. And what that is it's the inherent instinct of the soul. By definition, as we were saying, is eternal, full of knowledge and full of pleasure. And trapped in this matter, it just doesn't make it. So there's a process. That is our message. This is not just theory, armchair. Well, that was interesting. He told a few jokes. Okay. That's an interesting idea. But how to actually realize it. In the Vedas, Sanskrit, there's 2 terms. One is called jnana, and the other one is called vijnana. Jnana means knowledge. Okay? It's theoretical knowledge. And vijnana means realized knowledge. And here's the difference. And I've actually had this happen. Not here, but you can look at a plate, a nice meal, and it looks great. Right? Looks good. But what happens if you bite into it and there's too much salt? Somebody, mixed up whatever it was and poured. Wow, what is this? So the looking is not the actual experience. It's an indicator, but it's not the experience. So theoretical knowledge is there, but how do I actually realize it? Like tasting it. How does it become part of my experience? How do I actually experience that spiritual consciousness? Realize myself, realize my loving relationship with the Supreme. How does it become real? Prabhupada said one time, I was sitting in the room. He said, you think you're sitting on the floor? I'm sitting in the hand of Krishna. How does that become real? So the Vedas also contain the process for how to realize that consciousness. I'll give you a simple example. If I want to plant a seed, the seed may be potent, but is it sufficient? It's necessary, but is it sufficient? I've got to put that in fertile soil, isn't it? And I've got to water it. Then it will generate, and it will fructify, it'll grow, it'll do its thing. So there is a process called sadhana. Sadhana is if our consciousness, now we're close to time. Everybody here, I imagine, who went this at least through 8th grade in the Explorers, knows about Columbus and Magellan and Vasco da Gama, and I don't know who all those other guys ever was cruising around going somewhere, Marco Polo, or whatever it is. Exploring the external world. You look at those old maps, and they call it terra incognito, which means unknown land. America was an accident, at least for Christopher Columbus, was in the way of where he wanted to go. So as there are explorers of the external world, and you've got so many, Heisenberg's law, gas law, whatever, they're all exploring. Is it logical to assume that there were deep intellects exploring the external world, what about great intellects exploring the realm of consciousness, the internal world? It has its terrain, it has its roadmaps, so the great saints and sages of India, in their laboratories, known as ashrams, in their laboratories, in their ashrams, refined and honed the process there's a process for distilling water. Isn't that? It's a simple thing. But there's a process, and you get distilled water. The average American under hypnosis can remember, how many is it? It's 357 commercial jingles. The average American remembers under hypnosis. Hey, Coke's the real thing. Nike, just do it. I don't want to start you down that road, but you think about what's rattling around in there. Someone said to Srila Prabhupada one time, they said, oh, this mantra chanting. Previously it was like, they thought it was voodoo or whatever. Now everybody understands mantra, that, even businessmen, to calm down, will have some mantra that they chant. Of course, we're talking at a spiritual sound vibration. But there's a process, and it's mapped out in the lab books. I took chemistry. I love to blow things up. It's a lot of fun, actually, So you follow the lab book, and if you do it right, boom, you get the reaction. Or it changes colors, or it does whatever it's supposed to do, So the great saints and sages of the Vedic tradition, exploring the realm of consciousness, using as their charts the Vedic literature, have laid out how to, like I was saying, distilled water, how to distill one's consciousness. That's what I was going to say. My spiritual master, somebody said, oh, this mantra chanting, it's brainwashing. And both innocent and sublime, Prabhupada said, if the brain is dirty, shouldn't you wash it? If you think about it. And we got all that stuff rattling, lust, greed, anger, commercial jingles, I'm this body, I'm black, I'm white, I'm fat, I'm thin, You dissed me, you disrespected me, road rage, all that's just brewing. What to do about it? But there's a process. So we'll end here, but my humble request is please take it seriously. Please take home. We have a book table out in front. We have Bhagavad Gita. We have hardbound Gitas. We have soft Gitas. I think a soft Gita is $5, $7. I don't get a commission done. You know. If you don't have the money, we'll give you one. I will make you an offer here today. If you don't have and there's so many versions of Bhagavad Gita, you've got to get a Bhagavad Gita, just as Krishna says himself, someone who's living Bhagavad Gita. Not Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada said, people speak from Bhagavad Gita, because Bhagavad Gita is a famous book. It's renowned around the world. Every good philosophy course teaches you Bhagavad Gita. I mean, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, it's the University of Chicago. They're there. Stanford, UC Berkeley. Bhagavad Gita is there in every philosophy class. But people like to take Bhagavad Gita because it's famous and put their own words in it. Our Bhagavad Gita is called Bhagavad Gita as it is. Prabhupada said, instead of taking Krishna's words and sticking your own meaning in it, Kurukshetra is the body and the Pandavas are the five senses and this means, I saw a Bhagavad Gita for golfers and Arjuna was the caddy. I swear to you, what? Huh? They made a movie? Anyway, rubbish. So, but Prabhupada says, don't take Krishna's words and twist them with your message. Prabhupada said, go and write your own book. And then Prabhupada said, and see who's reading it in 5,000 years, Write your own book. So Bhagavad Gita as it is, written by a pure devotee, coming in a line of pure disciplic succession, realized the import of Bhagavad Gita and translating just according to the great saints and sages. The original Sanskrit is in there, the Devanagari, there's English translation, there's commentary. Take home a copy of Bhagavad Gita and read it. And we have tech support. That's what monks are for. You can get the devotee's card out there, you've got a question. Question means that intelligence is where you don't have any questions. It means, anybody home? So questions are good. We got tech support. Ask a question. There'll be a good answer. And then the other thing is so you've got sadhana, but another part of that, in order for an experiment to work, we chant japa. Anyone have their japa beads here? Japa mala, Exhibit A? Hold those up. Exhibit A. The practitioners of Bhakti Yoga, these are prayer beads. Well, Joseph's working on it. But you've got the idea. There you go. Every genuine spiritual tradition, the chanting, the recitation of the holy name of the Supreme as a mantra. Man means mind, tra means expanding, delivering. Right on time. So please, take home a Bhagavad Gita. Invest. I don't want to out anybody here, and who cares? It's a small thing. What does Starbucks, a thing of Starbucks coffee cost? It's $5 at least, isn't it? Whatever. Get a little cream in it or whatever it is, So how much you spend on Starbucks or what? And let's suppose it's no calf, no problem. Invest in a Bhagavad Gita. Take it home and read it. Why invest that much time in the possibility that you might not be matter? You might be an eternal spirit soul. And your birthright, your default mode is eternity, full of knowledge and full of happiness. Why not invest in that? Why just stay in the same groove as everybody else? Monkey see, monkey do. And in order for that information to fructify, it's common sense. If I want to perform an experiment, a serious experiment, they put it on those tables so it doesn't vibrate, because you don't want any outside vibration. Truck goes by, blows all your measurements. You got to have a hermetically sealed so you don't have any contamination coming from outside. You got to use distilled water, right? If there's no contamination, if you have a contamination, it will foul the experiment, right? if we don't purify our consciousness for lust, greed, anger, envy, if the mind doesn't settle, how are you going to actually experience and understand the sublime information? So the chanting of japa, if I put a metal rod in iron, a metal rod in fire, the metal rod I can handle, it's nothing. If you put it in the fire, what happens? Heat and light. By association with fire, it became like fire. If we associate with the holy name of the Supreme, apapavidyam, pure and antiseptic, it purifies the heart, it purifies the consciousness, and the transcendental knowledge will fructify. So in summation, I promise, take home a copy of Bhagavad Gita. Take home a copy of Bhagavad Gita as it is. A copy of Bhagavad Gita translated and commented on by a pure devotee who's realized the subject matter. And take home a set of japa, a set of these japa mala. We can show you how to chant. Chant a round a day in the morning or in the evening. And I will give you those for free. If you can pay for them, pay for them. And I will give you, a 30-day home demonstration or your karma back guarantee. You take home Bhagavad Gita, read it seriously. Read 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day. Who cannot do that? We spend that much time reading the back of the cereal box or waiting for the light to turn red. So 5-10 minutes Bhagavad Gita, chant 1 round of japa a day. Come back in a month, and if your life is not changed significantly for the better, we'll give you your money back, guaranteed. Okay, can we end there? Thank you for sitting so patiently. Please take home Bhagavad Gita, get a set of japa mala. Hare Krishna, thank you.
Wow, what a wonderful talk. Thank you so much. So now we're going to have a second kirtan, and then afterwards we'll have some announcements.